not right. Я плохо человек, нехороший. Нехороший человек, круглый. Лук почти съеден. Я столько лука покупал, он почти формальдегидный был. Formal edible. Не понимаю. Не понимаешь. Eligible. Да.
Still plays like an inferior clone of Metroid, violence and all. The way we approach and play these games
This video was
often feels
sponsored by
much
Novo
more similar than their
Residence.
mechanics would
If you have a
become.
paper and pencil nearby, go ahead and put 4 dots anywhere on the paper and connect them to make a quadrilateral. It doesn't matter how weird the shape is, and I'll just put a few examples here to illustrate that point. Now put a dot at the midpoint of all of those line segments you just drew and connect those to make another quadrilateral. Turns out no matter what, connecting those midpoints will always yield a parallelogram, or shape where opposite sides are parallel to each other. The reasoning behind this is a theorem that says if you connect the midpoints of 2 sides of a triangle, that line segment will be parallel to the third side. I could then just form another triangle which shares that third side, and then connect those midpoints you see here. So again, as a result of that theorem I mentioned earlier, these 2 line segments you see here are parallel to the third side, which means they're also parallel to each other. Then if I connect the other 2 corners, I can make the same argument, which gives us 2 new parallel line segments, leaving us with a parallelogram. What we just solved was math in 2 dimensions, something that could be done on a flat piece of paper. We'll soon get to 3 dimensions though, which we can of course grasp since the space we live in is 3-dimensional. But once we move to higher dimensions, you'll see the intuition is mostly gone, leaving us to rely on mathematical analysis, which can still be done without that intuition. But to set up a lot of what's coming, I'm first going to ask, how many different types of 3-dimensional dice are possible to make? Now, I'm using the word dice pretty loosely here, because what I really mean is 3-dimensional polyhedra that meet certain criteria. The first one is that every face must be a regular polygon, and the same regular polygon. So, for example, this cube, or a die we're familiar with, is an example of this, as every face is a square with the same sides and same angles. The second criteria is that the same number of faces must meet at each vertex, or each corner. For a cube, that would be 3. And then the third is that shape must be convex, so it can't look like this or anything. So including the cube, how many 3-dimensional objects fulfill all these requirements? Well, I've got a few here that do. Like a tetrahedron, which has 4 faces that are all equilateral triangles. We of course have the cube. Here's the octahedron that's also made of equilateral triangle faces, except 4 faces meet at a corner here, not 3. There's a dodecahedron that has 12 faces, which are all regular pentagons. Then we've also got the icosahedron, which has 20 faces. But how many more are possible? I mean, in 2 dimensions, you can have infinitely many regular polygons, or side lengths and angles. But when it comes to putting those on the faces of a 3-dimensional polyhedron, what is possible? Well, this is it. These are the 5 Platonic solids, the only shapes that meet the criteria we discussed earlier. That's definitely not obvious. For example, I found it weird that we can't have a die with hexagons as faces. Okay, well we can, like this one here, but as you can see there are pentagons as well. So it doesn't meet that requirement of having the same regular polygon on each face. Now, this is the point where I was going to do a proof as to why there are only 5 Platonic solids, but I decided to do a dedicated video just for that. So if you want to see, you can click here or down in the description. However, we will do a little more analysis with these shapes. Take a look at the vertices, edges, and faces of each solid. There's something these all have in common, and it's not obvious at first. But if we subtract the edges from the vertices and then add the number of faces, in each case the value comes out to 2. This relationship of vertices minus edges plus faces is known as Euler's characteristic. Yes, another one of his. And it turns out for any convex polyhedron, Euler's characteristic is 2. In fact, even for a sphere, with regards to the surface, Euler's characteristic is still 2. And that's because a sphere can be morphed into any convex polyhedron, aka these shapes are homeomorphic, and Euler's characteristic is preserved under homeomorphism. But things get even weirder when you realize...
Трогает у меня просто. Нет, не думаю, там
But
тебе
they all have a
просто.
central struggle that focuses on you.
Access account, dev view, just to give ourselves...
Ну нет, не надо, не надо.
Hello everyone, my name is Jamie Smith and welcome to Devlog Zero about my game, The Endless Arc. The Endless Arc is an action-adventure roguelite involving random generation and a mix with the adventure genre. Game programmer Ara is forced into the vibrant and quirky world of the Ark, a game of her own creation. Yeah, she is stuck inside her own game. I really took to games like Enter the Gungeon, Forager, Heartbound, and Garden Story, since this game is basically a combination of adventure and dungeon-based gameplay, with a wholesome experience blended in. Now, there's much more to it that makes it unique, so be sure to listen up. But the way the game will work is you can go into dungeons, fight enemies, unlock new items and weapons, all that stuff, but also unlock new adventure areas. And these Crash Bandicoot-inspired slots on these portals will have something to do with that. You can then explore these areas, progress the story, utilize what you've already unlocked, and the skills you've gained to go further into these places. And who knows what waits on the other side? I'm super excited to share this with you and the progress I've made so far, so please join me on this quirky and fun game dev journey. I will leave timestamps through the video so you can skip to a part if something doesn't interest you. So before the Endless Arc even existed, I started making a prototype for a big adventure game I had in mind. I was in my final year of university at the time and I had to create something for my dissertation. And after seeing the potential of Undertale and how fun it was, also being made by a solo developer, I felt that I wanted to give it a try. I mean, how cool would it be to make a game and for so many people to enjoy it and make a living in the process? Now, I will say this, being a solo developer is not easy. I've started to move away from that a bit myself because I know it's easy to manage and the end result will be much better, so I've started building a small team. The only problem with this project was that the scope of the game was too big. An open world adventure game. Well, I made like what? One rough game a long time ago? It doesn't make sense. So let's skip ahead about a year. I used to make Let's Play videos on YouTube, and I was one of the first to make a video on the game Hardbound. The main developer, Full, reached out to me to use my video on Steam. I eventually joined the Discord server, and after a period of time, he started a game jam of his own. I wasn't going to join at first, but his advice in making small games to start off with really resonated with me. April 23rd, I submitted a game prototype for the first Para Software Game Jam. This was the very first version of the Endless Arc. and I went into it very optimistic. I wanted to make something like a roguelite with random level generation, and yeah, that turned out to be way out of my reach. But somehow I found someone who was able to help me get a rough form of random generation together. I ended up being a runner-up for the game jam, which really motivated me to push forward with the project, and I decided to put the other game, the massive, big, open world game, on hold. And that's where this story officially begins. Ooh. On a side note, I do have a Discord server. You can join if you want to see updates or just come to chat with the community. It's a really nice place, trust me. The goal for this game was a randomly generated experience, which was new every time you played it. Basically a roguelike, but there wasn't really anything special about this game just yet. That wasn't until I started adding a bunch of other stuff. Now, I am aware of feature creep, and I've avoided adding certain things and taking some away. I've been down that rabbit hole before, and I'm more prepared this time. There's a few core features I wanted to stick by. Variety, exploration, and wholesomeness. Now, I enjoy a range of genres, from games like Spyro, Garden Story, Heartbound, to others like Binding of Isaac and Enter the Gungeon. I wanted a game that really fits what I enjoy, in the hopes that this combination will be something others enjoy too. Let's talk about roguelite. Now, this section embodies the variety aspect. So, the roguelite aspect involves what you'd expect, but in a chunk sort of way. Think of the game Forager, a super fun game that involves purchasing new islands, chunks, to find new things and to expand your world. So let's go to the portal room quickly. There will be multiple different portal entrances, different dungeons. Now, this allows the player to choose which order they play through the dungeons. This could be important depending on what they have currently equipped, or if I decide to add in elements, which I'll talk about later. So I'm taking this chunk idea of Forager and combining it with the diversity of Enter the Gungeon's room generation to create a random dungeon generation system that allows you to choose which path you want to take by purchasing them with a currency you can gain through different methods. There are different shared chunks which can sometimes contain different things, and it also helps to diversify the rooms so it doesn't get boring. For this, I'm using GM Room Pack by Yellow Afterlife. Now this is honestly the biggest lifesaver, because even with the help of my assistant programmer, I was finding it very hard to develop a dungeon generation system that worked nicely. Now bear in mind, I am not that good at programming in Game Maker Studio 2, and I don't even have a programming background. But I have gotten better since I've been making the game, but I do have a long way to go. I'm more of an arty guy myself. Now then, what would a roguelike be without weapons and items? Only this time I'm calling them mediums and charms. So I chose the name mediums because the fairy Somna, who travels with Aura on the journey, is able to possess objects you find and utilize their magic to shoot a variety of projectiles. Now this just helps give a reason for why you're able to do certain things, rather than just, dying and resurrecting like a game. Even though you're in a game, there's a reason behind the things you do. Now, in terms of the weapons and items, I'm planning to have a lot of these, since weapon and item variety and combination is super fun, and it's super cool to see strategies players come up with. Okay, so the idea in the back of my head is to utilize an elemental system like Genshin Impact, where weapons and elements of different reactions can occur depending on the element of the weapon, the enemies, the environment, or elemental afflictions. So these could affect both the player, the enemies, and possibly the environment, which could really add some strategy and cause the player to be a little more careful with their actions. As I said though, the idea is on the back burner for now. I want to get the main demo done first until I feel that I'm happy with it, and then add the extra features on top. So the adventure section, this embodies exploration. I wanted there to be more to do outside of just dungeon diving over and over. It's nice to take a breather sometimes and see what else there is that could help you progress the game or explore the world. Firstly, we have the main hub. I want there to be lots to do here, but not too much as to get the player confused and lost. So we have a few characters in their houses, some unlockable areas, the portal to the dungeons, there will be some secrets scattered around, and also this cliff with vines. Now this leads down to the beach. Right now this isn't too important of an area, though there is another unlockable area here, and also another house, which has a very cool feature. Oh my god, soon! The unlockable areas are going to be heavily focused on being able to explore, fight roaming enemies, finding new stuff, also story progression and possibly bosses depending on the area. I guess something like a Zelda experience. I haven't completely figured out these areas just yet since they won't be in the demo, but I'm hoping that being able to explore the main hub, the houses and the beach would be enough to satisfy players in the demo to get a feel of what exploration truly be. On to wholesomeness. So the obvious ones, no guns, no blood, no killing of animals or other people inside the game. It's all canonic combining two different genres together helps to achieve that, since you have the time to relax, explore, and interact with other characters and objects if you want to, or dive into dungeons and play over and over to get the best run possible and unlock even more content. Also, the art style and settings of the levels themselves are also very colourful and rich in nature, which really helps to define what kind of game this is. For example, if my game had sharp edges, dark colours, and certain design choices, it may lead you to believe it to be a violent game, a lot of combat, or feel very dark in nature. The fact that I've chosen a lot of bright colours and rounded happy clouds, for example, helps create a completely different feel. Also, none of the characters in the game are truly evil. The virus that is trying to take over everything isn't evil either, really. You may come to hate it, and I don't blame you, but it's just doing what it's been made to do. Check out the movie Summer Wars. That was a big inspiration for this. So it doesn't hate, love, or really care about what it does or doesn't do. Also, I wanted to include some really cool guest features in my game. So I have planned our Krabby from Nisho Island, made by Cheeky Lords, and Norman the Frog from A Frog's Tale, made by Norman. The games and the people are pretty awesome, so I'll link them in the description for you to check out. Please do. Also, there's a cool feature at the beach in Blueberry's house called the Slime Haven. You'll be able to save slimes throughout the game world, and they'll end up here. You'll get extra bonuses in some form, but I won't say too much about this right now. So, what's next? Next up is to work towards actually completing the demo. There's still plenty to do, and I want it to be as good as possible so that the response from it is as good as possible. After the demo, I'll likely work towards a Kickstarter campaign, but I won't think too much on that right now. Basically, I just need to get everything completed that exists in the game at the moment. That includes artwork for the character houses, weapons and charms, make sure they work properly for the dungeons and combat, character dialogue, portraits, anything unfinished. My main focus right now is going to be the artwork, since I feel like I overwhelmed myself before with everything that had to be done, and I took a bit of a break to kind of deal with other stuff in real life, but I did get back into making gaming videos again, which is super fun. Now I'm really looking forward to making more of these, and I hope you are too. So let me know what you think in the comment section, and be sure to check out my Twitter or Discord server. I also have a Patreon if you fancy supporting, checking out stuff early. As always, believe in yourself, never give up, and I'll see you next time!
So in the last episode, yeah, whoops, sorry. Everything was going so well, and then I just suddenly felt tired. There were several things that happened that kind of killed my motivation to do anything. But I really care about this project, and I thought it'd be damaging to the project if I worked on it while I'm not enthusiastic for it. So I just waited, and my enthusiasm just came back one day, just out of nowhere. But think about it this way, if somebody's really thirsty, the longer you go without giving them a glass of water, the more they're going to want it and appreciate it. And so imagine you wait 5 months without giving them a glass of water. They're really going to appreciate that. And thank you again for all being so amazing. We went from 3,000 to 20,000 subscribers last episode. And so imagine if that's you, then this is 10,000, and then 20,000 is two. So in the last episode we added ground pounding, diving, rolling on surfaces, a bunch of animations, rolling out of dives, diving off of walls, and in this episode we're going to be making things good rather than bad, which they currently are. And what I mean by that is, while things may look like they're working on the surface, under the surface they're kind of rushed and messy.
Can you imagine having a career that's so fulfilling that you actually love going to work, but also having a career where you get to choose your own hours, you get to work from home, and you get to earn more money?
While undoubtedly a throwback to the charms of the 8 and 16-bit era of gaming, the pixel art style continues to be a firm favourite amongst developers, publishers and players alike, and in early 2021, well, there's no sign of a slowdown in new pixel art games. With that in mind, We're taking a look at 25 pixel art titles, the ones we're most looking forward to playing, that with any luck are releasing later in the year. Now let's get things started off, and in no real particular order, at number 25 with Garden Story. Here you'll play the part of a newly appointed guardian of a village in what's a social simulator action-adventure RPG, with an emphasis on you helping out your local community. Players will traverse. As we wind down to the end of the year, it's time to take a look at some of our most wanted games expected out in 2021. Hi there and welcome again to Get Indie Gaming and to the first of a 5-part series where we show off some of the best looking indie games likely to launch next year. While some you've likely to have seen before, we're confident this series will show off plenty new titles to go on your wish list. And on that, let's crack on with the rundown. Let's begin, and in no particular order, we have You Suck at Parking, which in my case is entirely true in the real world. Expected out at some point next year, and dubbed here in the press release as the most extreme parking game, and the only one of its kind with an objective at some point to find a place to park up, it's essentially a fun and vibrant looking racing game where you need to get from point A to point B without crashing or exploding or have anything else really get in your way. We suppose one of the best ways in describing this one, and at the time the video airs you can play a short but enjoyable demo on the game's Steam homepage, well, it's just so delightfully silly. We adore the playful nature of the graphics and the cars and other vehicles that remind us of the box stuffed full of Hot Wheel racers we have somewhere up in the loft. You Suck at Parking is expected to come to PC via Steam, and like we suspect many of you watching this video, we'd love to see it also come to the Switch.
Did you know? ClickUp adds new features every week. So you can do incredible things like schedule project timelines, see who's online right now, and understand team performance. New features every week. ClickUp.
Expected out at some point in the spring of next year. At number 9, Growbot is a distinctive point-and-click adventure with some of the prettiest artwork we've seen in ages, particularly within the delightful-looking characters and backgrounds, with perhaps the exception of one other game featured later in this rundown. Aside from the artwork, Growbot looks ready to deliver a really interesting overall story where you play as Nara, a Growbot within a space station who's in training to become a ship's captain. Like others, our first thought upon seeing Growbot was how it gives us a feel of Machinarium, with the puzzle aspects looking simple and yet engaging enough, where you'll be tasked with, amongst other things, arranging flowers into the correct order, push and pulling of levers here and there, and manipulating and matching objects from about the place. So yes, Growbot looks pretty special, and will be headed to PC via Steam. From one visually endearing game to another, Endling is headed over to PC by way of Steam, and also coming to the Xbox, PlayStation, and the Nintendo Switch. Endling is a 3D, side-scrolling survival adventure game, all seen and told through the eyes of what's said to be the last fox on Earth, as she looks to provide food, shelter, and safety for her pups. By day, you'll hunker down in your shelter, and by night, you're aiming to move with stealth from place to place, ever watchful that each move could be your last. Said to be an eco-conscious project designed to leave a lasting impression on players, Endling is currently listed as coming out soon. Is this a day one buy for you? If so, be sure to let us know down in the comments. Moving on, and at number 7, There Is No Light is certainly a far more gritty looking affair than the first few games in this little rundown. There Is No Light is a brutal action-adventure game that's set in a grim underworld ruled by a group called the Church of the Great Hand. There's a demo you can play right now on the game's Steam homepage, and having spent a good while with this, the pixel art graphics, characters and backgrounds are stunningly done, as is the combat, which, as we've already mentioned, feels exceptionally brutal, with players needing fast reactions and a deft touch to avoid a quick and violent death. With horror sections, plenty of boss battles, There Is No Light is expected next year on PCs via Steam. From one gorgeous-looking pixel art and brutal fighter to another, at number 6, Death Trash has been in development for more than 5 years and is the work of a single developer. Unlike all of the other games within this forthcoming series, Death Trash is the only one that's expected out in 2021 within early access. Longer-term viewers of the channel will know we've covered this one a few times, although if you're new here or new to the game, we think you might like it even though, well, it does look a touch grisly and macabre. The game features an open-world single-player environment with what's called a strong story campaign and optional local co-op. Looking at the recent developer update posted on Steam from late October, the developer has mentioned the game has plenty of personality, the combat and controls feel good, and that the local co-op mode is fun, although there is still room for improvement. To be honest though, based on what we've seen of this one so far, we don't mind waiting for this to come when it's good and ready.
Как устроена образовательная платформа Geekbrains? Учим на основе образовательных...
This is the story of a little juggler's girl. Trapped in her life, she wanted to see the world.
At number 5, and something we think will be new to most viewers here on Get Indie Gaming, we have A Juggler's Tale, which might be coming out next year, although we have the suspicion it may pop out to the year after next. Either way, we wanted to give this 3D side-scrolling story-based puzzler just a little signal boost. There's something about all of this that's just ever so slightly unsettling. You play as a string puppet called Abby, held captive within a circus. One day she escapes and sets out to explore what she finds to be a war-torn, ravaged medieval fairy tale, avoiding bandits, crossing rivers and generally keeping herself safe and well. Said to be a story about hope and empowerment, we're perhaps most looking forward to see how the puzzles will work out, all the while using what's said to be a unique string puppet-based gameplay mechanic. Expected to come out when all the knots are tied for PC via GOG and Steam. And Steam. Up next, and the latest game from Swery, The Good Life is expected to launch in the summer of next year onto the PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and the Nintendo Switch. A long time coming, this was first kick-started in 2017 to the tune of nearly $800,000. The Good Life tells the tale of a photojournalist called Naomi Hayward from NYC, who's in town to investigate a place called Rainy Woods, which is the so-called happiest town in the world. Given this game is from Swery, we can perhaps expect it to be a tad odd here and there. We already know Naomi soon discovers the villagers are able to transform into cats at night, and soon Naomi's able to join them as either a cat or a dog, each of which brings new and different gameplay elements. Will you be quick and nimble like the cat, or use your canine sense of smell? Amongst the investigation of the town, there seems to be plenty of other things to get up to, and like all games from Swery, for us, The Good Life will be a day one by. At number 3, and remember, this rundown and the other videos in this series once they drop will be in no real order of preference. Eastwood has been a firm viewer favourite here on Get Indie Gaming since we featured it around this time last year. With a Steam page listing as coming soon, Eastwood is one heck of a stunner to look at, and will see you embark on a journey through a society that's on the brink of collapse. The human population is almost dwindled to nothing, and a deadly toxic presence has spread that destroys everything in its path. That's where you come in to fight it all off and all the other nasties while solving environmental-based puzzles. You want dungeons? Well, Eastwood has those too, as well as a quirky cast and places to visit. Eastwood is expected soon onto PC. At present, there's no word of console releases. At number 2, and just sit back and take a look at this one. Dordogne is a story-driven adventure game where you play as Mimi, a 32-year...
Ты посмотри, кто такой-то вообще, блин. Да нет, он знает уже просто. То есть, как бы, да, понимаю. Интересно, ставишь. Мужским. Зачем, не говори-ка, мы зачем это проходим, правильно? Понимаю, там шутит уже только да. Ну нет, зачем? Ну как бы так. Все равно делать нехрен, правильно? Ну типа того, до кучи. Ну да, понимаю, это себя. Кому надо и так он знает сам, понимаешь? Здоровому человеку будет интересно, понимаешь? Ты уже слышишь меня, правильно? Рано или поздно. Мне же интересно, например, и это интересно, и это. Но я туда не буду вмешиваться, потому что, во-первых, денег нет на это. То есть, как бы, во-вторых, это самое... Ну, да. Ну не надо говорить просто и все. Потому что жизнь лишняя, понимаешь? Лишней жизни нет у человека. Ну да, это уж сами я не касается. Ну что хочешь сказать? Вот вдруг тебе не нехрен, вот ты смотри, вот как знаешь славянское, да, вот сдохнешь, вот знаешь, что тебе, оказывается, не нехрен делать-то было. Можно было вообще, да. Еще как ого-гоюшки можно было вообще. Нет, нет. Характер мешает немножко, да? Наоборот? Ладно, слишком хорошо. Это я так все. Я все придумал. Просто так, со злобы, короче, вообще нет, нет. Даже мне чуть не это самое. Мне уже самому не интересно, что ну, не важно. Может, никто не знает. Нет, ну не то, что не интересно. Ну ладно, ну ладно. Чтобы жить нормально, надо сначала жить, скажи. Да, понимаю. Ну, что тебе могу сделать? Я вообще не живу ради того. Верно? Традиция у меня такая. Ну, не знаю, а что тебе? Как понимаешь ты? А почему такое состояние, что все пронеслось, и ты как бы, а что нахера вообще? Такого нету, что ты вот, ну да, вот я понял. Ну вот я понял. Ну так может тогда не будешь задавать вопросов? Как ладно. Так тогда не о чем говорить, понимаешь? Он тебя понимает. Работать, работать, работать. Спать.
Year-old woman visiting the house of her recently and way back and take a look at this one. Dordogne is a story-driven adventure game where you play as Mimi, a 32-year-old woman visiting the house of her recently deceased grandmother. Mimi used to spend her summers with her grandmother, who before passing left Mimi a series of letters and puzzles, and in so doing remind her of her life. Play as the older and younger Mimi in what looks more watercolour than video game. One of us here in our little team likewise used to spend the summers down there in the south of France, and every time they look at this game, they say they can almost feel the warmth of the early evening sun on their faces as they recall sitting alongside the river or having yet another cheeky little piece of French pastry before settling down to a hearty but fresh summer evening meal. Quite simply, we've not seen anything like Dordogne before and really can't wait to see yet more from it. As for a release date, well, there's a hint here and there of a 2021 time frame, although we can happily wait and sit back all the while to play once it's good and ready on either the PC or the Nintendo Switch. At number 1, and bookending the first video in this 5-part series of games we most want to play in 2021 or perhaps beyond, Sable has, like a few others, been on our wish lists for quite some time. With an art style that feels vaguely familiar, Sable is expected out next year, with it bringing a coming-of-age tale of discovery through an open-world desert landscape that's full of ancient relics from the past. While travelling across the desert, you'll come into contact with nomadic clans to learn their tales in what's said to be a deeply personal quest about self-discovery. Sable is expected out first on PC and onto the Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S. So there we go, we're out of time on this, the first of a new series of our most wanted games out in 2021 and perhaps a little beyond. With 4 more episodes due before the end of the year, which games are you most wanting to play? Leave us a comment, and if you've liked this video, click the like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. A subscription with all the notifications turned on is the easiest way to stay up to date.
Ну, он понял тебя. Да нет, она тебе... Ух ты. Что-то русское. Все, спать пора. 12 часов. Это со мной? Кто это такой? Кто это? Это кто вообще? Это никто. Это что? Даже... Частично. Кто это? Гузарова, слово. Нет, в смысле, слово этих. Гузар, не знаю. То есть, у нее нету этих штучки, нет? Не наоборот. А, ты какой? Нет, это другая. Нет, смотри, я тебе точно гарантирую, вот смотри, экологичное отношение как бы к женщине там, то есть это я тебе точно говорю, вот вообще, ты даже тут меня не сможешь победить, то есть как бы ты даже нечего побеждать, только получается, что ты себя победишь. То есть женщина должна быть беременной, ну, я имею в виду там, даже не важно, я тебе не говорю даже, что там она жена, там бла-бла-бла, понимаешь, то есть нет, я имею в виду те, которые ты как бы типа отношения строишь с которыми. Как, ну как это называется, ты понимаешь, короче. Да. Это точно я тебе говорю. Да. Да, понимаю, да. Ну, коллеги, они как бы мужского, они как бы условно мужчины, как бы, понимаешь, считаются. Ну или бесполые, ну, типа, условно, так скажем, да. Ты сам решай, как ты с ними больше. Ну, наверное, лучше бы вместо них были мужики, понимаешь? Вот тогда вот вместо 10 женщин один мужик бы справился. Ну так, наверное, я не знаю. Как бы. Я гипотетически не просто так сказал. Ну не знаю я. Может, как ты их, что ты будешь с ними делать? Вот ничего не надо, вот у них мужья, пусть они с ними делают. Меня не касается, что ты... Ну нет, я просто... Это вообще не касается, потому что это оставим где-то там. Я имею в виду, что надо, понял, что... Ну не знаю, сам смотри. Потому что женщина везде женщина. Черная, зеленая, белая, оранжевая, с таким характером, с таким характером. Пока даже из них что-то выпадет, все равно не станут. Ты понимаешь? Не знаю, как ты уже... Нет, это плохо. Ну ладно, не важно. Ну нет, ну ты согласись. Да. Скорее всего, ты наживешься таких штучек, когда слово добра, что вообще не понимаешь. Надо понимать. И в конце окажется так, что только так и надо было делать, понимаешь? Я не знаю, так что... Ладно, знаешь. Ну это так, что-то я защиту своих прав потребителей. Ладно. Понятно. Ладно. Ну не свезло мне. Кстати. Я дурак, да? Нет, не знаешь. Нет такого. Я дурак, нет, что ли? Ойдер есть? Ойдер. Айдер. Как тебя собаку позвали? Белка Айдер. Айдер. Женя Айдер. Ладно, что там у нас? Ну да, кстати.